with Tim Lance, CEO of Avant Technologies. Pleasure to have you back on today, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm great, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. So we're given an update today. So the acquisition of Wired for Health seems like a strategic move to advance AI interoperability in healthcare data. Can you elaborate on how this acquisition enhances Avant's capabilities in leveraging AI to address the challenges in healthcare data management and analysis?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's several layers of strategy on this one. So healthcare, as a lot of people would be aware, went through a digitization period, moving from kind of paper charts to electronic medical records right over the last 20 years. And it's created a kind of constant large pipe of new data being created every single day across all of the healthcare activities that go on. Um, and so handling this data and being able to make sense of it is a huge undertaking, right? So healthcare is when we look at across industries, the areas that are really investing heavily in AI, that have a lot of opportunity for growth. Healthcare is one of the top. And one of the challenges in sort of how you wrangle all of that data is just the inconsistencies in the data itself, right? There are several different standards of how to handle healthcare data for different purposes. I would say that there's not always a lot of adherence to the standard. Um, and so that's, when you look at jobs for AI, that's one of those perfect jobs, right? Is like sifting through a lot of transactional data to, make sense of what's in those transactions faster and more efficiently and more accurately than a human could comb through all of that. And so that's what, one of the things we're excited about with the Wired for Health acquisition is, they're playing heavily in that space and in a specific area of healthcare data that lends itself to AI. And so we believe that that creates opportunities for us to leverage the AI that we have, Avant AI, which was, really built to do large scale transactional analysis and also was trained on several healthcare use cases. It's a really nice fit there. And just with the amount of processing and data and speed required to do things real time in healthcare, at the bedside, if you will, we believe that that's also a great opportunity for what we're doing on the infrastructure side in terms of high speed, high density compute. And so, we view this as strategic, both on the data front and the AI front, but also as a, lead in opportunities to what we're doing on the infrastructure side.
Sounds like lots of synergies. So you also recently announced plans to accelerate development of your own MicroDAT Center in the Milwaukee area in 2025. Can you tell us a bit more about what drove that decision and how this move ties back into the major strategic initiatives the company is also working on?
Yep, absolutely. So, as we kind of started, into the year, we talked a lot, and pretty openly about our plans on the infrastructure side, right? Really building high density compute infrastructure, and targeting AI and private cloud customers for that. Um, and so, as we looked at our business plan, the first phase of it was really around bringing that infrastructure to market, more of like a bare metal solution, if you will, right, where existing clients could buy it and put it on premise in their own data centers, or maybe data center colos would buy it. And as we started building out, our commercial pre-sales pipeline for launch later this year, we were seeing demand coming from the bare metal side of the business, but also a lot of demand from companies that are, in co-location models now. And they're saying, we want better performance, we want better service, we want better speed, we want more cost effectiveness, we want a better environmental sustainability profile for our products, but we don't have our own data center, right? And we don't want to build our own. We'd like to continue to co-locate with someone else. And so for us, it was really getting to look at the data and look at the demand profile and see that we had an opportunity to pursue the plan that we were on, but to accelerate a future stage of that and bring it a little bit closer, right? And start it earlier. And it dovetails very nicely also with the Wired for Health acquisition in terms of, kind of bringing that whole business plan together and just moving at it a little bit faster than we originally planned.
So collaboration plays a pivotal role in driving technological advancements, as demonstrated by Avant's partnerships with Wired for Tech, the acquisition of Wired for Health, and your openness to partnering, co-locating your new data center. How do you approach building and fostering such strategic partnerships, and what criteria do you consider when selecting partners to ensure alignment with Avant's mission and values?
a good question. There's a lot packed in there. I think for any partnership to work, right, I think there's a couple of things that we always look for. One is, is there an opportunity to do what I call win together, right? Or like have a win-win. I know it's a little cliche, right? But I think if you want a really good, successful partnership, there have to be clear tenets of the partnership where you understand what each person's looking to get out of that relationship. Uh, and those things have to be there and be able to be realized, not just be sort of a, gosh, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that it happens, right? But you have to like be able to see a clear path, right, to how those synergies can play out. So that's probably at its core the first thing that we look for is just, from a business standpoint, does it make sense, right? And can both parties get what they're looking for out of the relationship? And then from there, you look at sort of the cultural dynamics and like are these folks that we feel we can work with, and can they work with us, right? Do we sort of have similar values, similar working styles, right? Do we complement each other in terms of our people and skill set, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about execution. um, and then we have to look at sort of that cost and economic and resource availability piece, right? So there are some partnerships that, honestly, we were looking at earlier in the year, and some things shifted in our business, some things shifted in their business, and we at some point realized that we didn't have the alignment in certain areas that we thought we did, and then we in other areas just didn't have the resource capacity, or they didn't have the resource capacity to kind of make it a focus. And so we decided to, we had to hold off on that one, right? Because it just wasn't the right structure, the right timing. So I think those are the key things we look for, right? Is there synergy? Is there complementary skill sets, and people work together well? Can we actually execute? And if we do well, does everybody win? And do you have the resource capacity to actually get the work done? So,
Makes sense. So with all the recent and exciting news, can you give us a glimpse into the key milestones and achievements that we can expect from Avant Technologies in the next 12 to 18 months?
yeah, for sure. So, I would point out, kind of to answer that question, if you go back and look at some of the things that we've shared, in press releases in the last, let's say, 8 weeks, all of those things are really interconnected pieces to what we're doing. So, we're still moving full steam ahead on launch of our new infrastructure later this year. A big piece of that is refactoring Avant AI, and doing some of that software development around the infrastructure, which is also under process. Um, and so, it's really continuing to execute on those fronts, right? While we integrate the Wired for Health, and we believe that there are some natural leverage points there, right? Some of the work we want to do in the Wired for Health acquisition as we integrate it over the next 30 to 60 days ties back into some of the software development, some of the AI refactoring, some of what we're doing on infrastructure, proof of concepts and testing. So it's bringing those worlds together, right? And then sort of simultaneous to that, going through like the site selection process and all of the planning process that we need to do to tee up that first data center to open next year. So that's really the focus, is on executing on the things that we've announced, and tying those things together in the way that they were intended to be tied and leveraged for each other. And then, launching the infrastructure later this year, and then having hopefully a functioning micro data center in the Milwaukee area early to mid next year. That's also leveraging that infrastructure, right? And then ramping up, we're already ramping up on pre-sales. So, hopefully having some good commercial momentum announcements as well coming up between now and the end of the year, as we continue to kind of pre-sell into the new stuff, and look to grow the assets that we currently have.
Exciting times ahead for you guys. So how does the company plan to leverage these near-term initiatives to better position itself to handle the rapidly growing demand for AI and other data-driven technologies in the upcoming years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and it ties nicely to, expectations, as we look into the next 12 to 18 months. So, yeah, I think about building a business a lot in the same way as building a house, right? You build a solid foundation, right? Um, and then the more solid your foundation is, the more, rooms and floors and levels you can safely add on top of that as you build it and make it bigger. And so what we're really doing now is laying the foundation, right? It's getting the infrastructure foundation launched and tested. It's getting, the AI and the software, modified and adjusted to where we need it to be to support that infrastructure. And then it's, building a strong business around that has, for us, the goal is to really have a good, solid recurring revenue model around that business. So there'll be some, I think one-time revenue in terms of implementations or capital equipment sales on the bare metal out of the gate. But really looking to build a stable recurring revenue base around that technology foundation that we're working on right now. And the acquisition of Wired for Health is a good starting point, right, to do that. And then we'll continue to, augment and add on and build around that. But once you have that foundation, right, once you have, the technology that's working, you've gotten into your proof of concept cases, right, you can show in real world scenarios that it's delivering the benefits that it's intended to deliver. That's really how we look at that foundational layer. And then everything else from there is about growth and expansion, right? And how quickly can you kind of bring in capital to the business and be able to fund the growth effectively, right? Because we know the demand is there. Right. So it's just tapping into that demand and then being able to fund the growth in a smart way that goes as quickly as we can get it to go.
Awesome, Tim. Well, thanks for all the updates. Sounds like you're well along the way in terms of your plan. So I look forward to having you back on in the future for more updates, and best of luck with everything.
Great. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.